Welcome to the Sonic Collective, a music podcast that explores a different album or musical concept each month, diving deep into its history, context, and impact on the music industry. Join our hosts, Alan, Scott, and Darren Scott, that's way too many Scotts, as they share their thoughts, insights, and personal connections to the music, inviting you, the listener, to discover new perspectives and appreciation for some of the greatest albums and music of all time.
Hey everybody, you are tuned in to the Sonic Collective. My name is Alan, and I am joined, as always, by Scott Coates, Scott Gregory, and Darren Scott. My name is the only one that does not have Scott in it. Somehow, they keep me around anyway. For the month of April 2024, we reviewed the Prodigy's album, Fat of the Land. This was my pick for the month. If you tuned in to the previous episode, you'll have caught the preamble I gave about, what was special about this album, what was special about Prodigy, and if you haven't caught that episode, maybe you should backtrack a little bit and tune into that. But anyway, that is what we listened to this month, and we're going to do our review episode right now. So I think I'm going to throw it over to my friend Scott Gregory to kick off what he thought of this one.
Thanks, Alan. We keep you around because you're pretty, if you were wondering. So there you go. Illusions dispelled.
So yeah, nobody can see me blush here.
Yeah. I've listened to this album in its entirety a lot over the years. Like, I really enjoy it, almost to the point that I might have to revise my island list that we made now that this is back on my radar. I can't believe I didn't think of it when we were doing that. It's kind of embarrassing. I'm pretty sure my first exposure to Prodigy was seeing their video on Much Music, Canada's equivalent to MTV when it actually played music, for Breathe. It was just so different than everything else that the channel was playing at the time. Much used to do these compilation albums of the most popular music of the day called Big Shiny Tunes. Everyone here will know about that if you're Canadian. And Breathe appeared on the second album, but alongside songs like Song 2 by Blur, Push by Matchbox 20, Paranoid Android by Radiohead, and maybe the closest thing to this album, Beautiful People by Marilyn Manson. It was just a different time for music that this album inserted itself into, and it just captured my attention so deeply. It had layers to the production that I deeply appreciated. The lyrics weren't anything to write home about, but anytime they had samples added in, it just felt integral to the experience and not bolted on for a bit of variety. On top of all that, most of the album, it was very danceable. I was like early 20s when it came out. I was in college. I was hitting bars with friends. And when one of the singles came on, we'd all just hit the dance floor. It was really great. And generally, what I liked to dance to wasn't really what I wanted to listen to, sitting down in my apartment and that. I actually don't really listen to dance music much at all. I like dancing to dance music. I don't like listening to dance music. But somehow this album for me lives comfortably in both worlds. The first thing I had to do was really go look up which songs were the singles again. And I realized that all of my favorite songs on this album aren't singles. Like, going in, I was looking at the playlist on Spotify, and I was shocked which songs get played the most and how much the rest of the album, it's just a fraction. Breathe, Firestarter, Smack My Bitch Up, the three singles, they all have up to 10 times the plays of any other of the songs, which I think are criminal. My top three on here, I would say Diesel Power is probably one of the lowest tempo songs on the album, but it's my favorite. It shows how the band can change levels and attack from a different angle. And yes, I do think this album is attacking me. It's aggressive sonically. The vocals have edge, and not just in the sense that some of the lyrics are controversial, but this song in particular with Kool Keith rapping over top, it just hits you hard. It's a bit of a juxtaposition with one of the less intense bass lines on the album. It breaks up the front half of these songs just perfectly. Minefields comes in second for me. Again, a lower tempo song. This one almost devoid of lyrics. It's got a catchy bass line. It builds up slowly to a crescendo before transitioning into my third favorite song, Narayan. And I'm probably not saying that right. But again, Narayan dovetails from Minefields. It builds to a catchy hook. It's a great listen. I can't remember who the lead singer of a band. I can't remember the name of the band who does this. Alan, I'm sure, will correct me. But it's a great listen, and I love to listen to it at home and again to dance with this song. I won't pretend to be a dance music expert. Again, I'll lean on Alan for how this fits in that overall pantheon of musical styles, moving from the rave scene over into infusing rock. But as a tourist, this is the stuff that appeals to me. It's a great build-up to Firestarter on the album, which I feel is really the full crescendo of it, with Climatize functioning as a solid outro. Fuel My Fire feels completely bolted on to this album. I don't know why it's there, and I think it detracts from what would otherwise have been a solid 9 tracks. It would have come in at about 50 minutes. It's close to our sweet spot for our album lengths. So, yeah, 3 solid faves, all from the Beef side. 3 great singles. I don't want to give the impression I didn't enjoy them because I didn't speak to them. I'm sure the rest of the group will. They're all super slick and iconic. Just the rest of the album is great too. Even my criticism of Fuel My Fire isn't of the song itself. It's just that I think it could have been trimmed out for a leaner experience. And it's rare you find an album where literally every song could likely have been a successful single if they would have been chosen. So while for many reasons you won't find this on many critics' top 100 albums in the 90s, I think it has to be there in spirit. There isn't anything out there that bridges rave with rock with a big helping of punk transgressiveness like this album does. I don't think Prodigy was able to ever to even duplicate this feat themselves. This is the best Prodigy album, and nobody is quite like them. What about you, Scott?
Yeah, I knew of this album because I was a DJ at the time, so I think Breathe was that first big single. So I definitely did play Breathe, maybe at the old Fox and Firkin or, somewhere around there. I'm not sure if it was the Rattlesnake Saloon or what bar. So I was familiar with that, and I was also familiar with Smack My Bitch Up. I never listened to the whole album, though, and as I listened to this, I realized, man, there was a lot of singles on this. I think there's at least 4 songs that I sort of was familiar with. For some reason, I was thinking I wouldn't like the album because, I thought the singles were okay, but I didn't love them, right? But I gotta say, overall, I enjoyed the album much more than I thought I would. And, Smack My Bitch Up, it starts off strong. I like the music of it. I realized the lyrics pretty controversial. And I remember even when these guys were supposed to be on Saturday Night Live when this was big, I think some of the female cast members wouldn't do that episode of the show or something. But hey, I like it. It's interesting that sometimes instead of that, it says, take my picture. So I was listening to them trying to figure out, does he actually mean like hit his girl? Because they say, take my picture. I'm not sure, but it's a catchy song. Breathe is also pretty intense. And then I also like Minefields, and when I particularly Minefields, all I can think of is The Matrix. I think there was a song or two from the Prodigy, maybe on the Matrix soundtrack, but either way, when I listen to, particularly Minefields, but a lot of this album, I just keep thinking of The Matrix. And it also took me back to 2 albums that I just looked it up today, actually come from the same year, 1997. The Chemical Brothers, Dig Your Own Hole. So, well, not exactly the same. I was like, some of the tracks, I was like, I really got into that album. The Chemical Brothers was probably the first of this sort of genre I listened to. So similar sound, not as aggressive. These guys to me strike me as almost like the punk rock or hard rock of this music, whatever you call it, a form of electronic. And the other album that kind of reminded me of this that I was surprised was 97 was Vegas by the Crystal Method. So more mellow and smoothed out, but it's interesting. All 3 of these albums came out at the same time. As I got into the back half of the album, funky shit, I don't know. So. And I gotta say, like Fuel My Fire, I really have never liked that real fast kind of electronic drum beat, regardless of who does it. So Fire, I don't like. And Firestarter, I never really dug that song much. But as I listened to the album again, I enjoyed it much more than I thought I would. But I found myself kind of fatigued by the overall sound about 3/4 of the way through every time I listened to it. So for me, it was good for maybe 30 minutes. And then I just started to feel overwhelmed by the sound. But man, when you go back to what was going on musically at that time period, I mean, this is brand new, out of the gates, revolutionary new sound. And yeah, I had fun listening to it. How about you, Darren?
Yeah, thanks, and good pick, Alan. Like you, Scott, I do remember this album coming out, and it was pretty huge. Like, they kind of came out of nowhere. Same kind of era, and I think for those of us in Canada, there was Much Music, which is our MTV, had Big Shiny Tunes. I think 2 it was on, or 3. I think it was 2. 2 was the big one, and that did really well here. And I think it was a lead track on that, if I remember well. As we live in Calgary, well, we were all from here. Obviously, Scott's over in Thailand now, but our NHL hockey team is the Calgary Flames, and for many, many years, and still gets played, Firestarter is a big theme song for the Flames. That makes sense, right? Yeah, I mean, hey, Prodigy, the brainchild of Liam Howlett. Keith Flint is the singer of Firestarter that everybody associates with him, but really he didn't even do much. He was the hype man for the band. And then there's also Leroy Thornhill. Maxim was the MC, and there's a former member, Sharky. But a bunch of rave guys got together, but just were pushing the boundaries, which I liked. I actually really got into this album. The more and more I listened to it, the more I appreciated it. And we reviewed John Mayer last month, and that was an album that we all kind of came to the conclusion didn't really push any boundaries, not really an album that would influence others. It was more influenced by, whereas a sound like the Prodigy, Scott, you mentioned the Crystal Method. There was another band too, MC 900 Foot Jesus, was a few years before them, and was really starting to combine hip hop and some kind of grungy style, almost not quite rock, but another good band that it reminded me of. But I just felt like they were really just had this new sound. Obviously, Scott Gregg, you mentioned they just kind of fused this rock, punk with kind of electronica rave music, which I thought was really cool. It's just a really interesting sound. Firestarter again, and I mentioned Keith Flint, that you know from the video with the shaved kind of head down the middle and the almost like red weird horn stuff and the American flag on his sweater that apparently he picked up at a thrift shop on the way to the shoot for like $5 or something. Became this big fashion statement. But this Firestarter was an instrumental, and then he just said, "Hey, I think I have some words for it. You should let me do words." And usually he was just the guy on stage just hyping people. He didn't really actually play or do anything. So he actually considered himself the Firestarter, because he was the hype man. He would get the crowd going, and he was that guy. And so he's just like, the song is about him, his role in the band. That's what that's about. Going to the other songs, Bree's a great song. I do like Smack My Bitch Up. Does it really stand up? And I consider myself a feminist and don't love it as well. And you're right. The Beastie Boys had an issue with them. A bunch of artists did. Tori Amos, I know, went after them in that SNL fiasco. Hey, I've read a few things from them. I don't think they meant any harm by it, but it's just one of those things. At the time, it seems like not bad, but that didn't age well. But besides that, I mean, it's actually a decent song. I really like that it's kind of breakbeat influence, like you mentioned the Beastie Boys. Funny, they were against them, but they actually then they made up, and they use a sample in a couple of their songs on this. And I also like that Kool Keith, a classic old school rap guy, was on the Diesel Power track. And there's a little unknown, but Matt Cameron, the drummer for Soundgarden, actually played drums on this, and I guess they sampled them, but they credited him as Mark Cameron because he was signed to his label and he wasn't allowed to do that. So, they don't really, anything I read, they didn't actually say exactly which beats were his. So you don't really know, but apparently the drummer from Soundgarden is on this album. So that's kind of a cool thing. Known as the Godfathers of Rave, really interesting band. And you might have mentioned this, I missed it, but like they debuted at #1 in Billboard. Hardly any bands, and especially British bands there, did that. Like it was a very major achievement. It has a Guinness Book of Record for the fastest selling UK album ever. Interesting, I don't know what the exact metrics are around that, but I think it was because they released Firestarter 6 months before the album came out, and that just became this phenomenal hit. And so when the album dropped, it was like everybody just went and got that thing. It was just such an interesting sound. I thought another thing too was Liam Howlett, the creative genius behind all this. He created that sound, and then apparently he was approached by Bowie, by Bono, U2, and Madonna, because they're like, oh, we like that sound. We're, they always try and influence new, add in new sounds. But he downright refused. He said, no, I'm not going to go do it. Like, I'm not giving you my sound. That's our sound. Like, you don't get to just make it into pop songs, you crazy big pop artist. Beat it. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I guess too, like, really, The Fat of the Land is the name of the album, but it was a slag at the US, and he actually wanted to call it The Land of the Fat. Take that, Americans. Lay off your nacho cheese. But hey, anyway, phenomenal album. I really enjoyed it. The more I listened to it, the more it grew on me. And I think just that appreciation for, as mentioned, just that unique, cool sound that wasn't really happening at the time. I'll leave it there. I'll come back with a few other things when we do scores. But Alan, I guess this is your pick. So what do you think?
Yeah, thanks, guys. Really interesting to hear your takes. The music videos for their two biggest singles, Breathe and Firestarter, really put the Prodigy on the map for me back in '97 when this album kind of rose to prominence. I actually used to test the bass in my car with Smack My Bitch Up. That song's got a lot of sub bass, and it really made my woofer just thump. Man, like the Prodigy, they came out of nowhere with such a unique sound. I can't remember if this, Darren, I don't know if you mentioned this. This was their second or third album, I think.
Third album.
I don't remember. Third album.
Third.
And the first one to prominently feature any sort of lyrical content to speak of. And I think that was probably one of the catalysts for their success, right? I mean, they came out of nowhere, and they really bridged this gap between punk music and techno. And nobody had ever done anything like that before. So I think in doing that, it kind of had this really broad appeal, and it was edgy, it had energy, it just sounded super unique. With a modern lens, listening to this album again after, well over 2 decades since its release, I think it still hits home. I think it still hits really hard. Sonically, it sounds a bit dated, I think. I mean, the techno boop, beep, bop stuff kind of gives away that this was a 90s album, because I guess the whole techno scene has really evolved since then. And I don't know. As Scott Gregory mentioned, the vocals have a lot of edge, and it's especially present on songs like Firestarter and Breathe, and even Diesel Power to some degree. I'm kind of a sucker for UK hip hop, so anytime they're rapping with an accent, I always tend to appreciate that. I may have some nostalgia bias here, but I think for my money anyway, the biggest singles off the album are probably still the standouts. Again, we mentioned Firestarter and Breathe and Smack My Bitch Up. I think for me, those are definitely the highlights of this album. Not to say that the other tracks on the B-side are not worth listening to. You guys have mentioned that Smack My Bitch Up had some misogynistic lyrics, and I think that's pretty self-evident from the title of the song. I found it odd that they caught so much flack for that, given, the contents of a lot of hip-hop is also just rife with misogyny. But, like Darren mentioned, the album was a #1 debut on Billboard, so I think it just rocketed into the cultural lexicon so quickly that people who discovered it for the first time were they didn't know what to expect. And then a song like Smack My Bitch Up with the lyrical content and the music video probably was a bit shocking to to certain people. So I get it. And Scott Gregory, I agree with you that Fuel My Fire is probably the weakest point on the album. To me, it was a bit of a strange way to end an otherwise really solid album. Scott Coates, we are also on the same page as far as our dislike of the song Funky Shit. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed kind of exploring this one this month and kind of reacquainting myself with the Prodigy, or at least an old school version of them. I tended to listen to this album a lot during workouts because it just had all that high energy and aggression and an edge that I needed to kind of lift heavy shit. So yeah, I think it was a fun one. Let's get into scores, and I will throw it back over to you, Scott Gregory.
Yeah, thanks. I agree with Scott that this is an overwhelming, exhausting listen for sure. So be ready for that. I used to test the bass in my car with a remix of On Point by House of Pain that just seemed to destroy with this low frequency bass that it had. Smack My Bitch Up, Ray fans knew what it meant. It was a throwback to hip-hop culture. I agree with you, Alan. I think there's a lot of hypocrisy around it. Until people get upset at Ben Folds for covering Bitches Ain't Shit, I'm not going to say anything about Smack My Bitch Up. So yeah, influence. This was a big influence on me at the time. I'm going to give it a 4. Highly recommended at a 5. I do honestly think in spirit this has to be one of the top 100 albums of the 90s. You have to listen to it just because it sticks out. When things are starting to get into this really poppy kind of formulaic groove, they come in that you just smashed everything, and I always count on the UK to do that. So super happy they did that. Overall 4.5 for me for sure. Scott, what about you?
Yeah, thanks. Again, I did enjoy the experience because I was surprised how many singles I knew of. And I agree with you. I'll start with the recommend. I'm going to give this a 4.5 because, and now I'm thinking, why wouldn't I give it a 5? Because it really, I think, was the first of that sound. I'm not sure anyone has had exactly that sound since, but they sure put it on people's radar. And again, I was surprised that I was listening to the Chemical Brothers then, and that's the same year. I only discovered Crystal Method maybe 5 years ago, but it's funny that Vegas album is the same year. So they definitely, I think you got to listen to them. So 4 or 5. Influence, I'm only going to give it a 3. At that time, it didn't really influence me, but I'm actually just called up a Crystal Method live set on YouTube. I'm going to listen to Working later today. So I am going to kind of go back down that road. And overall, I'm going to give it a 3.5. Enjoyed it. Probably won't listen to it a whole lot, but I think it's an important album and it was a lot of fun. So thanks for the pick, Alan. Over to you, Darren.
Yeah. I think we're gonna have some similar scores here. I appreciate. This did over 10 million. I thought with the songs too, that Narayan or whatever, I thought it was a bit long, to be honest. I'm with you guys on the funky shit. If anything, it's funny he talked about he wouldn't give his sound away to Bowie and U2 and Madonna, but then why are you then using Beastie Boy clips, which might peg hole you with close to them. So yeah, maybe not necessary, but hey, they're from Braintree, Essex. I have a nice scar on my chin from getting jumped in Essex, so I appreciate their roots. A little rough on the east side of London there. But anyway, hey, Influence, I think this is a really great album. I think it's a 4 for me. Recommend as well. I'm coming in at a 4 there as well. I really, really like this album. And overall, that's going to average out to a 4. I just thought, phenomenal album. I agree with Scott Gregory. I think this is a very big 90s album that really pushed the boundaries and did something new. I probably could have even upped my scores, but just maybe personally, though I really like it, it's just, again, it is, you got to be in the mood. It has a lot of hits on it. And speaking of that, taking a hit of some cannabis will probably help you out when you're in there. It sounds pretty good on that. So anyway, Alan, what do you think?
Yeah, I got to agree. It sounds really good on cannabis. I think we're all kind of very much aligned on this one. My scores are really similar. Overall, I'm giving it a 4.5 out of 5. I think most of the songs on the album are really solid. There's a couple that are better than others, and we've already kind of gone over those ones. But I think if they had maybe just trimmed the fat a little bit off the Land, it might have scored a little higher for me. Recommend. I'm going to give it a 4.5, 4.5. After diving into this one, a couple plays through, I went and actually looked into some of the other releases from subsequent albums, and I was kind of shocked to realize like how pervasive Prodigy songs have been in the media I consume ever since. Like, they've got music on video game soundtracks that I've played. They had a song a few years ago called Omen that I completely forgot about and then rediscovered and completely fell in love with all over again. So yeah, recommend was a 4.5, and influence I'm giving a 4. I think they probably influenced a lot of people. Scott, I don't know if they influenced the Chemical Brothers or the Crystal Method, even though they all kind of came out around the same time. I don't know if they had any interfacing or anything like that, but certainly this was groundbreaking stuff sonically, and it's just super cool. So that is it for my scores, and I think that's it for this review. So up next is Scott Gregory with his pick for the month of May, and I'll leave it to you, Scott, if you want to talk a little bit about what you're going for.
Yeah, just really in brief, you've kind of influenced what my pick was going to be, because when I was researching what was happening around this time, I ran into Tidal by Fiona Apple, her 1996 debut album. I think she is another groundbreaking artist that came out with a different sound and pushed some boundaries in that space. Darren knows I like my lady singers, and so that's what we're going to roll with. Fiona Apple's 1996 debut album, Tidal.
Wicked. I'm excited for that. I've been crushing Fiona Apple recently, and I think Tidal's probably her best album. So
I know a few of her songs, but I don't know that album. I'm excited to listen.
Never listened to her. I couldn't name one song, but I know her name.
Mm-hmm. You guys are in for a treat.
Well, here we go.
Yeah.
Let's get it on.
What's the album name again?
Tidal.
Sorry? Tidal.
Tidal Wave. Tidal Wave? Tidal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Super. Tidal. There we go.
Yeah. Cool. So if you're tuned into this, then you know what to expect for next month. And Scott will release a bit of a preamble episode just teeing up our next album that we'll be reviewing for May of 2024. But until next time, I want to thank you all for tuning in. This has been the Sonic Collective with Alan, Darren, Scott, and Scott. Catch y'all next time.
Hey, thanks for joining us on the Sonic Collective, where we've explored the music, the history, and the impact of some of the greatest albums of all time. We hope you've enjoyed our discussions and gained new insights and appreciation for the music you and we love. Join us next month for another exciting album, and until then, keep listening to great music.